As someone who has spent much of their adult life watching cartoons about Japanese high schoolers falling in love, killing each other, and sometimes even giving each other the dirty business,
のは私の歯ブラシじゃないか？まさか。兄ちゃん、その歯ブラシを私の尻に突き立て。
I do believe I am one of the worst people to assess an African-made Disney cartoon show. So in this video, that's exactly what I'll do. Hi there, I'm over the Unpopular and this is the Unpopular Department, where everything is unpopular by design and not just because we're a bunch of unlikable douchebags. A little while ago, a friend of the channel, Art of Nobody, here's his beautiful face for those of you who have no context, let me know that he was working on an exciting project which turned out to be an African-made Disney cartoon, an anthology show which would explore a variety of African cultures set in unique sci-fi backgrounds. I had no idea what the show was about when I heard about it, but obviously being a South African YouTuber that talks about anime, I had to give this thing a look. Now of course, many of you are asking, has Africa done it? Have they presented a noteworthy animation? Well, that depends on how quickly you get invested in characters and their stories. For me, it varies. For instance, does the character like boobs? I'm invested. Have they accidentally been transported to another world? Well, now you have my interest. Speaking of which, check out my book. I found myself trapped in a crappy anime. A journey penned by the godly hands of Moby the Unpopular himself, who is definitely not currently voicing this ad. Get yourself a copy now and experience the action, romance, fantasy, and of course, the great anime Kasankas. Experience the story that some critics have defined as, I really have no comment. I don't know why you're making me say anything. I haven't read the book. And how did you get in my house? Find the book now on the railroad or join the Discord in the description below and get yourself a PDF version of the book. I found myself trapped in a crappy anime. Enough said. Kizazimoto is an anthology show with episodes that range in length from about 11 to 12 minutes. Every episode features a unique set of characters, all of them hailing from different cultures and each of them existing in a completely different sci-fi African future, or in some cases, an alternate past. Every episode has a different art style and most of them are quite good. The sci-fi world built for each episode allows each creator and artist to express their creative imaginations, and each of the short episodes tries to tell an emotional story, often presenting some kind of underlying moral lesson. That might irritate some people because a lot of these stories were clearly written with a model in mind from the very beginning, though I suppose I would want entertainment value to be put first, but hey, you do what you can with the time that you get. The series shows off a rich variety of cultures and in some episodes beautifully ties these cultures to the unique sci-fi setting that the story takes place in. And honestly, I think this would be such a sick way of presenting African cultural beliefs about history and the roots of their practices, which I suppose is exactly what the Americans do with things like Vikings and Greek mythology. But hey, I think it would help a lot more people to learn and experience some of the interesting African cultural stories that exist in our history. You can tell there's quite a lot of passion and an overdose of heart given to many of these stories, and many of the creators had a clear and beautiful vision in mind, and it's quite awesome to see this vision play out for African animators on the international spotlight that is Disney+. However, I won't lie, there seems to be something in people my age where we assume that if something is made locally, especially something that's supposed to provide entertainment value like a TV show or movie or even a cartoon, we just expect it to be shit. And many of them are, likely for a variety of reasons. And so being burned by so many shitty shows, I think we just started to temper our expectations, or often we just don't have any expectations at all. However, there are times when those expectations are undeniably shattered. For instance, Seven the Lion has been on TV since the birth and death of Jesus, and nobody expected that show to get cancelled, which, by the way, that's so crazy. I actually only learned about this as I was filming this video. Who the fuck cancelled Seven the Lion? I mean, okay, the thing is, I can't really talk shit about Seven the Lion. I don't watch it. I'm not on TV. I'm too busy writing. I found myself trapped in a crappy anime. A journey penned by the godly hands of... So whether Kizazimoto defies your expectations, like I said, is very dependent on how easily you get invested in characters and their stories. And this to me is why I unfortunately found most of what I saw to be quite boring. As I said before, the short runtime and Afrofuture-centric focus of the show allows creators to express their creative muscles and present important lessons in short stories while taking full advantage of the chance to craft worlds they probably never imagined they'd get the chance to craft. After all, this is Disney money we're talking about here. What's cheap for Hollywood is riches in our country. However, the short runtime also means we're constantly meeting new characters and new worlds at a rapid rate. So we never really get a chance to know or learn to relate to any of these characters, especially when sometimes there's quite little dialogue from the main players considering the stories that some of them go through. Every new character comes in, experiences their journey, often having a deep emotional moment with another character whom we barely get to know, and then we're off to the next story. This is ignoring the extraordinarily brisk pace at which many of these stories move. Some episodes try to cram in so much story and lore into these short episodes, meaning oftentimes there's so much happening that you leave most of the stories barely even knowing any of the characters' names. This doesn't just apply to the characters, but also to the worlds we're being presented. Each episode has its own world, and each of these worlds has its own lore and history. Some of these worlds we get to see quite a lot of, however, there's very little time to get familiar with them, and this is quite detrimental to those stories where lore is so deeply intertwined with the story itself. I say this as both a negative and a positive. The positive in this case is that the writers and creators trust the audience to soak in the story and learn to understand the world they're seeing, as most of the important elements to understanding the lore is oftentimes given to us. On the other hand, this is a cartoon show on Disney Plus, and if someone who takes a little longer to comprehend some of these things watches it, they'll spend most of the time struggling to figure out what exactly is going on or why they should care. And therein lies the overall negative of the series in total. I spent an afternoon watching the show after a rather brutal workout.
Babe? What are you doing?
Shut up, I'm walking out. I'm walking out. Oh, I'm walking out. And so I was quite refreshed and by no means tired at all, but I could feel myself drifting off during some of these episodes, and the only reason I even managed to stay awake was because I was on Discord the entire time and I didn't want anyone to hear me snoring. With nothing to latch onto in terms of characters that you can relate to, and the worlds all being unique and sometimes quite complex, it feels like you're drifting through most of the show bored and uninterested, especially if you're someone who has seen stories like this being told already in other and often better ways. Not that I'm necessarily saying we should compare these. I do think I can safely say that this is what many young people will assume to be the first African cartoon that they've ever seen. And I phrase it like this because I'm quite certain that there are other African cartoons or South African cartoons that we're just not aware of. For instance, Super Strikers was pretty hot. However, that desire to avoid comparisons becomes hard when you take note that nothing about the show's writing feels distinctly African or even South African, apart from the culture and the times characters speak in various African languages. This is, as I said, a Disney production, and that seems to be what it is first and foremost. And so a lot of the Disney style of humor comes through, oftentimes making some of the humor feel like it's a very American style of humor with an African coating painted onto it. Ironically, at times it feels like the original Black Panther had a close idea to the manner in which African people communicate and the humor that they share.
We don't do that here.
Though I realize that this may stem from my bias as a South African with a mostly South African outlook. So, feeling this Disney-esque writing in some of the more comedic-focused episodes, it's hard not to compare it to Disney's other works, and perhaps to find it lacking, which in my opinion should be considered a somewhat good thing. I'd rather find it mediocre in comparison to some other high-budget cartoons based on the limitations set by the producers, rather than holding it to some lower standard simply because it's made locally, and find it pleasing for the fact that it's, quote, not as bad as I expected. To me, it just means that African animation can easily defy our expectations if we give it the right chance. While there's ultimately entertainment value to be found here, I do believe that some of these cartoons should be watched by fresh eyes that haven't experienced every cliche story under the sun. Some of these stories were extraordinarily predictable to the point that some of them have what I think are extremely similar plot points. For instance, the episodes in Kuzi and Surf Sangoma have nearly beat for beat the same climactic build-up towards the end. When Out of Nobody gave me a rundown of some of these episodes, I actually thought that these two episodes were the same thing, although I can't confidently say that this is a show meant for kids. Some episodes are rather lighthearted and centered on wholesomeness, while others can be surprisingly dark and even somewhat violent, at least enough to be a little disturbing for younger kids. Surf Sangoma, for instance, is one of those episodes that I'd advise people to have their kids skip, if not just for the awkward Afrikaans slang alone.
There is no watching here. You likely surf or you vibe.
Anyway, I obviously got a kick out of watching Out of Nobody's episode, and I think it's fucking epic that he had a hand in this, regardless of what anyone's final rating is of the show itself or the episode that he worked on. I won't say what episode it is because he's all cute and shy about it, but it was really cool to see his hand in something so unique. All in all, it really feels like the series is simply limited by its runtime, and I think despite how boring many of the episodes felt towards the latter half, I did enjoy some of them, and it's clear that given more legroom, African animation has the potential to surpass the expectations of those cynical about homegrown entertainment, and I'd like to see that potential reach its fruition. So I hope more African animators keep getting opportunities like this, and despite all that I've said here, I do think that everyone ought to give the show the old 2 to 3 episode test. By that I mean you should watch maybe 2 or 3 episodes, and if it doesn't hook you by then, you could just let it go. I think that this should work for any TV show that you're watching. At the very least, give it a watch to see that African animation can certainly hold its own against what many would consider to be the greats. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video talking about something made locally here in South Africa or in Africa in general. If you guys did like the video, please leave a like. Please consider subscribing if you're new here. Thank you all for following us on this weird journey. The Unpopular Department seems to put out something different every time we post a video. I do want to talk about more local stuff if I find them. So if you have anything from South Africa or even Africa that you think would be worth talking about, do leave a suggestion in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. I'd like to hear what you guys thought of the series if you have seen the series. Just for clarity's sake, I did actually write the book. I know that the ad in the video is being used for humor, but the Discord link will actually be in the description, as well as the link to the book on Railroad. So if you want to read it online, you can go read it there, or you can come download the PDF version from the Discord. I'd love to see you guys there, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are if you do read the book. I hope you enjoy it if you do read it. But other than that, I am Obi, and I am out, and I will see you on the next weird video, whatever video that might be. But until then, I'll see you all. Have a very good fuck off.